the best question I got was like, who's taking care of your kids? Babe, would you ask my husband that question? I wanted to light the studio on fire. Modern motherhood has become an unwinnable game. Let me roll it back. I've written 5 books. 2 of those books were children's books. And writing a children's book, it was something that I never imagined that I would do. And I found myself embarking on a book tour with types of press that never had made sense for me before. And that experience was really illuminating for me because I felt like I didn't belong. It was weird. There was this assumption that my primary and most important identity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, was Athena and Atlas's mom. And meanwhile, I'm on a book tour, literally traveling around the country, and I'm not able to parent those kids. I have help. I had a nanny. I have my husband. I have folks stepping in. I have my, proverbial village that I'm leaning on. So I felt super selfish for embarking on my primary identity in that moment was New York Times bestselling author. And it felt strange to kind of realize that friction of what I perceived as my identity and also a loving mom obsessed with my kids. But I was there wearing the hat as a New York Times bestselling author. Yes, to talk about a children's book. But if we're talking about the role that I was playing in that moment, I was there to talk about work that I put hundreds of hours into. And, I did do 2 book tours across basically 2 pregnancies and postpartum periods for my kids' books, Strong Mama and Strong Baby. And when I was pregnant with Athena, I asked Eva Longoria, I said, girl, give me advice. Like, what do you wish you knew with Santi? And she said, I wish people had told me less. And I took that as gospel to turn down the noise of the stuff that feels like just that. And I had lots of conversations with lots of mamas for children's books. And let me tell you about those conversations. I found them frustrating. And this is why. Because I started to pick up on this idea that motherhood is a competition, that inherently difference is wrong, that if somebody's doing it differently than you, somehow that's threatening to your identity as a mom with a capital M. And I think that sometimes on social media, what we're seeing and what is getting the most buzzy traction is stuff that is pejorative and actually pits mothers against each other. And, most recently it's like, are you a trad wife or are you this liberal version of it? And I think at our core, we have more in common than we have differences. I want to get to a place where a mother's own voice is the loudest in between her ears. And we are building community that leads with curiosity instead of judgment, and see someone who does something differently than you might and say, go girl, like God bless, Godspeed. So I'm trying to remix the motherhood game. I'm starting a series to reject the idea that there is one singular good way to do motherhood. If you grew up in the 90s like I did, mixtapes were all the rage. And if you had a mixtape that had some remixes on it, you were like, oh, this is like the freshest thing. But the remix was always rooted in something that, came before. That's the whole point. And I think if we approach motherhood that way, we keep what works, we keep what is sacred, and we reject what isn't for ourselves individually. I want to say fuck the noise and let's call each other in and share our tips, tricks, and secrets. Over the next 4 episodes, I'm going to give you frameworks and tactics that I use to tune out the noise when it comes to motherhood. I'm always going to give you my point of view, but I recognize in motherhood, it's not going to be the only one. And that's the whole point, is that Motherhood the Remix requires us to rise up and have a voice and listen to that internal gut instinct that, yes, is married with when you know better, you do better, right? And I want you also, maybe most importantly, to be emboldened to reject aspects of the motherhood paradigm that do not suit you, that you inherited as this unwinnable game, and start to amplify and identify the game that you really do want to play, that you've already been playing innately. Balance is a myth. We were sold a bill of goods. Balance is a harmful concept, and it's particularly harmful for women and mothers and leaders of households because it implies that everything is gonna get an even piece of the pie. That if you have 100%, that it's 50% of this and 25% of that and 25% of that. And I realized really quickly in becoming a mother that balance is kind of an illusory concept. And I was spinning my wheels a lot trying to find this idea of balance. As a high-achieving person, as an athlete, as an executive, I often don't have balance. Some days the scales shift and I'm 95% mom, 5% executive. Sometimes 100%. I take my PTO, my off-air, and my family time super seriously. But there are other times, like when I was on that book tour, I was 95% trying to be a New York Times bestselling baddie, right? And I felt weirdly like I needed to apologize for that or explain that away. The best question I got was like, who's taking care of your kids? Like, babe, would you ask my husband that question? Like, I wanted to light the studio on fire. I don't believe being a good mother is being a depleted one. I don't believe that my kids need me to be their everything. They need me to be someone in the world taking up space and loving them from morning until night. But loving them deeply, obsessively, doesn't mean doing everything for them. I want them to struggle. And I want them to see me struggle. I am not interested in content that treats exhaustion as proof of love. And so today we are going to trade this idea of balance for alignment. In terms of identity, some days are going to skew further in one direction than the other, and that's okay. You can be present with your kids and pursue your own ambitions. It's not a contradiction. And I know the pressure cooker that working moms are under. And I will admit right now, by the way, I think admitting and talking about the resources and the privileges that we have that might make that landscape and decision-making very, very different. So I do have help. I have a nanny. My husband and I have kind of unconventional schedules where, we might be able to do pickup or drop off. We don't leave the house at 7 and come home at 8 o'clock at night. I might be working pretty much those hours, but it's not like I'm chained to a desk. And again, I have resources. I have help. My mom will come in on the weekends, and I recognize that is an immense privilege that affects my entire point of view. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge that in the beginning of this series. But I do believe that no matter what life circumstance you have, you can trust your internal voice over external noise. Not every opinion deserves access to you, even if that opinion is from somebody you are genetically linked with. Sometimes those opinions can be the loudest. I'm so deeply blessed to have a mom and a sister and cousins and titis who, whose ideas of motherhood, like I really respect and admire, even if I'm doing it differently in certain ways. But I just want to I have to name that you can be obsessed with your kids and think that you are put on this earth to be a mom and also want to do other things, to have an identity beyond mom. That's okay. That doesn't mean you're loving your kids any less. And we don't have to explain that away. And if you don't decide how you want to define your version of motherhood, the world is going to do it for you. So these are some of the ways that I'm dialing down the noise and protecting my identity house, which is multifaceted. There's the both and of all of it. I protect non-negotiables. That is my training time, my work blocks, and personal rituals. And the rituals have changed, of course. I don't have an elaborate 90-minute morning routine. I see these TikToks of 22-year-olds without kids, like with mouth tape and like all that stuff. I'm like, that's nice for you. I want to see the 35-year-old with 2 kids and a job and a partner who's just trying to put groceries on the table, make breakfast. Babe, mothers have lived entire lives before 9 a.m. and Side note, why are kids' museums and activities starting at 11? I'll pay double for you to open at 6:30 a.m., okay? But we're protecting the non-negotiables, and we're deciding for ourselves what those non-negotiables are. And then once we've identified the non-negotiables, we're telling the people in our house, in our village, at our job, what are the things that we need to protect? Because those non-negotiables go both ways. Stop over-explaining your choices. Like, first of all, a no is a complete sentence. A yes is a complete sentence. You don't have to over-explain. You don't need permission. And oftentimes, your self-care is not going to be celebrated. Like, my 5-year-old is learning now about these concepts of self-care, and when mommy's working out, I'm going to have more energy for you. But initially, it didn't start that way. I had to really give her language and kind of train her to celebrate those moments where she's playing independently and I am not available. When I'm on the tread, they come up to me, and obviously assuming my husband's around or my nanny's around, I turn the volume up on my headphones and I say, "Mommy is not available. I am not available." And I don't over-explain that. Say no to things that don't align, even if they're expected. There are kind of social courtesies that we just inherited. And I even notice it when I'm doing kind of drop-off or pickup. It's so natural to be like, oh, that's how they do it. Or, oh, that's, we just want so badly to do so right by our kids that we can't help but play the comparison game. And you just assume that the other way that somebody's doing it, or the person who gives the most time at the PTA, or the person who's, got first in the pickup line. There's this kind of like this perception of a ranking system that I was just like, I am self-selecting out of that. I am focused on my kids and their development and the values that my husband and I are creating to the extent that I can control it. I'm not saying it doesn't work its way in. And I know different ages and different life stages, and with teens and young adults, I might change my opinion on all this stuff. And by the way, I give myself permission to change my mind. Give yourself permission to change your mind. When you know better, you do better, right? Like, that's the best adaptation principles that we can have. And I think entering motherhood with that idea is really freeing. Let some things drop. Some things are going to be turned off in a season. Build your day with intention instead of reacting. I had a beautiful conversation with my girl, Ali Love, the other day, and we were talking about the motherhood, the remix, working motherhood, the remix. And I identified for her something that I was able to name after Athena was born, is that somebody else's idea of urgent is going to gobble up what you think is important if you let it. Somebody's idea of a fire drill is going to gobble up the things that you think are non-negotiably important, and you have to have enough confidence to zoom out, or perspective rather, to zoom out and say, your fire drill is not my emergency. Because 9 out of 10 times, it's actually not. And the energy and the commitment and the focus that you're going to be able to give to that said fire drill when you've taken care of your non-negotiables, I mean, I don't even know if there's a measure on that. 5x, 10x, that's ROI. And the last thing I'll say is create small windows. They could be 10 minutes. I used to call them little moments of nap time hustle, little 10 minutes where I could claw back my day and create these small moments that are just for you. And maybe be so bold to add something on the calendar that is a block with no plan, girl. With no plan. Nothing. 15 minutes that nobody can talk to me. I don't even know how I'm going to fill it, but I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? You talk about Motherhood the Remix, that's a disruptive idea. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. So those are the things that I try to do consistently to create my own remix of an identity in motherhood. Every episode, I'm going to give you some questions to consider in identifying your version of Motherhood the Remix. What part of your identity are you not willing to lose? Name it and protect it. Where are you outsourcing your decisions as a mother? Decisions. I don't mean delegating tasks. We all have to do that in some way, shape, or form. Where are you outsourcing your decisions as a mother and take one back? And I think by this question, I mean the inherited kind of social stuff where we just assume we have to do a certain thing a certain way because that's how it's always been done, right? It's like the social commitment, or maybe it's the school commitment. Like, do you have to do it that way? Maybe there's a better way. What noise can you mute? I mean your social feed. I mean your family. I mean maybe some cultural traditions, some social traditions that are just not working for you and your family. They don't stand up to your values. That's okay. Be specific. Start to edit them out, or at least turn the volume down on that. What is one non-negotiable that you can put on your calendar this week and keep? I want to hear about the thing that you put on your calendar and then you told the stakeholders in your life, this is sacred to me. And I think it's with that voice that we show our loved ones, and especially our kids, that we are the architect of our lives. And we can be obsessed with them. I'm obsessed with my kids. I'm obsessed with Athena and Atlas. I think that they are Picasso and Serena and Tom Brady all in one. And they are just going to, theory of relativity, who's that? No, my kids are going to create something even more life-changing in science. Why not them? But also, why the hell not me? And I have to continue to show them that example, and you do too. This week's edit, I am talking about how I'm teaching my kids resilience, independence, and agency. Or at least I'm trying. At least I'm trying. I'm early in this motherhood game. I let them try before I step in. And we all know it takes much, much longer for a toddler to do shoes and zippers and opening things and putting things away. It takes so much longer. But it has paid dividends because they really feel like they are part of team familia. They're part of team family. They help with real tasks, not pretend ones. They carry groceries. They put away groceries. They clean things up. They pack their own bag. Athena's now getting to the age where she has very specific tasks and kind of chores. They make small decisions daily. What to wear, what to snack on. I want them to have choices. I don't rush to fix boredom. I am not a clown. Period. And I just observe often parents feeling the pressure to be always on and be their kids' everything. And of course, I understand where that comes from. Like, we're so deeply in love with our kids. But I want them to learn to be bored. Sit in it. Make something. Imagine it. Be bored. Adults, you need to get bored too. Take a walk without your headphones. Like, some of my greatest, most magical ideas are actually in the time that I commit every single week, and I do this every single week, to have uninterrupted walking time. I'm not on a Zoom call. I'm not listening to a podcast, although obviously I love walking and listening to podcasts. Hello, Project Swagger, walking baddies. But you need time to be bored, and so do our kids. If something spills or breaks, I try. I'm working on this. Pause and try to figure it out instead of reacting. Trying to work on my reactivity and get more into like problem solving mode, or like at least showing them, modeling for them like the oops and then the what do I do after the oops. I model follow through. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it, both in my own life and as best as I can for them. And of course, modeling repair, apologizing when needed. They see me train, they see me work, they see me rest. They see discipline. They don't just hear about it. And that goes for my husband as well. And we try to talk through emotions. Like, I think, being a millennial parent, we have the option to be more emotionally aware. And I think that that's amazing, to be able to name feelings, but not remove every discomfort. And, my kids can rattle off probably 10 things they can do when they feel angry or when they feel upset. And those are not tools that I had as a kid. So I'm really grateful that like my husband and I are supporting that. But of course, a lot of the grownups and the teachers and things in their lives are also, teaching them those skills of self-management. I want to hear from y'all. This is a motherhood roll call. What are the tips and tactics for teaching kids or modeling for kids resilience and independence. I want to hear. It doesn't matter whether you are currently parenting kids or whether your kids are well out of the house. What are the things that you did? I want you to call 1-877-ALL-SWAG and let's pour into this motherhood community with as much wisdom as we can. So as part of this Motherhood Remix series, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of behind the scenes, a little special stuff about my own family and motherhood journey. And I'm going to be starting with Athena and Atlas's names. I actually get that question a lot of how did my husband Drew and I come up with Athena and Atlas's names? Of course, they're rooted in Greek mythology. I love Greek mythology. I studied it in school. I am not Greek. I'm Puerto Rican and Cuban, but wow, Greek mythology has a lot to work with there. And so Athena is the older one. She came first. And my husband often would say that I would birth creative ideas like Athena from Zeus. Like it was like a joke that like, wow, you just had an Athena moment when I'd be like, oh, I'm going to write this book or I'm going to do this thing. And then I would just go like full steam ahead to create this project. And he's witnessed me do that a few times early on in our relationship. And when we found out we were pregnant, we actually didn't know the gender until the day the baby was born. And Athena was the name that we had on the back burner for if she was a girl. I just remember holding her and thinking like, yeah, you're such an Athena. She was born 3 weeks early. She was tiny, tiny, tiny. She was only 5 pounds. But there was such a strength in her. Like, you know, Athena's goddess of wisdom and war. And I was like, yeah, baby, you're going to make worlds shake. And that is so her personality now. And I think every parent has this experience of meeting their kids and then learning their kids and being like, oh, no, like you are so wise. Like you are who you know you are. And that has been a really cool experience with Athena. And I think that give and take is really special, especially knowing that she is, I believe in like past lives and things like that. And I do believe that Athena and Atlas and my husband and I have had past life experiences together. And apparently, a medium told me that Athena was my mom in a past life, and that honestly tracks. Like, that tracks. Atlas. So, with Athena being this powerhouse, the follow-up, the second child couldn't be like Athena and Joe. Like, no shade to the name Joe, but it needed to like hold the same gravitas. And So Athena came to Drew in like a flash. Atlas came to me in like a flash. And we knew the gender of the baby when I was pregnant. And I just innately, deeply, deeply knew that his name was Atlas. And, you know, we believe that how we interpret our names are just the beginning of the story. So we didn't feel the pressure that like the stories of the Greek mythology needed to necessarily inform like who they were as people. But we are realizing as we get to know them and they get a little bit older that there is a lot of synergy there. And Atlas is super physically active, very empathetic, and this idea that his namesake would have literally held up the world and then also be a map to the world. And his middle name is Sage. He's Atlas Sage. We wanted to balance this kind of intense name of Atlas, you know, this idea of this person holding up the world with wisdom. And so obviously sage, wisdom, but also sage as a historical practice. My husband and I sage our spaces all the time. We gave away sage at our wedding. It's an ancestral practice that we really deeply honor and love for clearing energy. And we thought, wow, what a way to hopefully honor this little being in the world, to have the sage wisdom, to know when to clear his energy and use it in the ways that serve his life. So Athena and Atlas, little baddies. We're just raising little baddies, and they teach us so much. I think they teach us more than we teach them. And as much as I totally embrace being a multi-hyphenate, and the both and of motherhood is something I feel really strongly about. Like, we don't have to choose just one thing. Of course, like, nothing lights me up more than seeing my kids thrive and win. and their names are part of that journey. And thankfully, they love their names.